Okay, so we live in a world where we're told that the caste system has been abolished. There are no more classes anymore. So I ask the panel, I ask the judges, I ask everyone, why then is a small, wealthy elite ruling over the rest of the country? So the motion given to us is this House would pay all elected officials the median wage in their country. I'm going to largely assume this is in Europe, just because that's the kind of environment I'm familiar with, and that seems where it would be most feasible to enact this. The mechanism we're giving is that their total yearly income and assets would be that of the median person. So mansions, nice Bentleys, whatever nice BMW they've got, will be that the median person will own. It won't simply be that they have a mansion but they're earning the median wage. They'll be living in the median person's house, so their assets will be that of the average person. So why is this important? There's going to be a variety of reasons I'm going to talk about. One is related to lobbying, and more specifically the rise of money-based lobbying.
Clarification?
Yes, I'll take that.
Are you including MPs' expenses as part of this? Your MPs' expenses would class under your income and assets?
Yes, their total yearly balance sheet will be it will also include expenses. So, firstly, I'd like to point out, as I imagine opposition will mention, that the median wage is not that low. The median wage is what every person in their country lives on. We are not sending these people to council estates, to tiny bedsit flats. We are sending them to what an average person will own. It will be an average house and a regular car. It won't be what is currently being lived in, which might be 2 or 3 different homes. Why is this important? We feel that MPs exposed to issues that affect the kind of average person will make them more empathetic to it. So, for example, I don't know, labour laws, they won't really be fussed that trade unions or, for example, collective bargaining has gone down because they earn enough. They don't need to ask for more money. They don't need to ask for different working hours. But should you reduce their wage, they suddenly feel that this issue should be more important. This will be a greater benefit to the average citizen. And of course it is the median citizen by definition, the kind of person in the middle, the Joe Bloggs, if you will. And I'm going to come to one of my main substantives now, which is about money-based lobbying. So lobbying really should work that an MP is unsure on 2 issues and 2 parties consult them and the MP then decides. But currently in the West, how lobbying works today is that people go to the MP, they say, vote for this, here's a load of money. And of course this means sort of by proxy that corporate interests are represented, that big business who can afford to pay MPs to vote certain ways, or sorry, lobby MPs. You're not allowed to pay someone to vote, but you can lobby them to do so. And so lobbying, if we do strip their assets to the median wage and we do make them earn the median wage, will stop because they simply can't accept the money, and so they'll therefore be, I'll take a point in a minute, and so as they can't accept the money, they can't accept any of the kind of assets that a big company would give them, they might be more inclined to listen to the average citizen. I'll take the opening.
So do you think if you give them less money, they won't find other ways to take that money that they would otherwise, because they're lobbying?
I'd like to believe that MPs wouldn't steal, to be honest. I'd like to think that MPs would represent their country and not, like, their assets are limited. I'm going to make this clear. Their assets are limited and their total income is limited. So it's not that you earn 20 grand a year, but you could accept a £50,000 cheque from Lloyds. I'll tell you a point later. So you can't take any more money. I'm really stressing this point to make it clear for the rest of the debate. So lobbying would go down, which will mean that the interests of the citizen may be better represented because the MP will be inclined to listen to both sides rather than just corporate interests. Why is this a good thing? If the citizens are represented generally for the citizens themselves, it's a better country. I don't really need to explain why a better country is good. So I also want to talk about how people aspiring to get into politics. Currently in Britain, most politicians, I believe it's around 60% are private schooled, an even higher percentage of that go to the top 1% of universities. So we see here that there is a very rich elite that are going into politics. Why? I would suggest largely for the money. If, for example, you go to Cambridge, you go to Oxford, you do anything involving politics or economics, you could earn a lot of money, but they choose to go into politics. Again, I believe it is for the money because they are paid such high amounts. I'll take your point in just a second. And because they are paid such high amounts, we don't believe they have the people's best interests at heart. They are simply self-centred and they are looking for more money. I'll take your point.
They get paid comparatively little, having in mind it's compared to the private sector, which normally pays MPs of skill sets considerably more money, normally in hundreds of thousands.
Yes, and that will bring me on to my next point. So we believe that people of higher incomes looking to go into politics under our new motion here will be inspired to do so because they want to make a difference. It's not a case of these so-called now career politicians who, since they're 21, have stood for Parliament. They had no experience of a real job, a real field or a real industry. Why is this a good thing? The lack of career politicians means if someone from a higher income does go into politics, they may very well be an expert in their field who's worked there for years and wants to give something back to their community, or they may just be generally a benevolent person and may actually want to make a difference in their country. Why is this better than the status quo? This is because currently we see that corporate interests, as I am stressing here, are massively overrepresented. Also, I want to touch on this briefly, people from lower incomes will be inspired more to go into politics. Currently, people from lower incomes, especially in the UK, generally are sort of apathetic and just not into politics because it's that thing that rich white guys do. But should this new motion come in, suddenly politicians are earning the same amount as the guy up the road. They're earning the same amount as the guy who owns the shop. It's a system whereby politicians become regular people and you can aspire, even if you're from perhaps even almost relative poverty in that country, you can aspire to become a politician. This will mean that lower class people are better represented in a system of government. Why is this a good thing? Because a democracy should be representative, and by reducing the wage you are meaning that by definition average people will want to be politicians, or average people are politicians. And so it's a more representative society, and on that I close the speech.
Thank you for that. I would like to call upon Louisa to open the second opposition this week.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everybody. The side of the proposition here came today to tell us that the MP should be living as the median person. Well, in my speech, I'm going to explain to you that actually the politicians are not the median people. They're different people, and their job is really different than my everyday job and my everyday life, and it should be that way. So I'm going to explain to you why they're not doing what the median person is doing, why they need that money, especially more money than the median person, in order to do it, and why this money is going to help the political system to be more inclusive, against what the previous speaker told you, and less corrupted than it is today. So I'm going to indulge in a few rebuttals before I move forward with my case. First of all, why they need more money and why the MPs are not the median people. Because actually those people have a really different job. Their job is to actually make a lot of calls, do a lot of meetings, go to a lot of trips, involve with different people within the country, outside of the country, in order to make important decisions, ladies and gentlemen. Those people, not only when they are at work, but also when they're at home, they're doing jobs for the parliament, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to do their best, and actually they're not doing what a normal, a median person does, which is actually going from home to work, then back again, then have family, etc., etc. That's why we truly believe that a person in the parliament needs more money in order to do that. The previous speaker was trying to tell us that they're gonna indulge into lobbying and into corruption if when they're getting paid more. So if they're getting paid less, they won't need the money. But actually, ladies and gentlemen, the scandals in the parliaments are really existing this time. We truly believe that people, the MPs, if they get less money, it's going to be easier for them to accept not illegal money, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to explain you in my case how corruption works, and this is what we call corruption. We need the MPs to be happy with their wage. We need the MPs to feel confident that they can live their own lives as they want and live their families in order to focus on their job, which is to make sure that we, the rest of the people of the country and the rest of the countries, live a better life, ladies and gentlemen. The second argument that they gave is that they're going to aspire people to get into politics. And the argument was that the rich elite is the only one that gets into politics, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's imagine a person that has a lower paid job or a farmer. If that person knows that when he gets or she gets into politics, they will get the median wage, then there is no motivation for them to actually try to get into the parliament. And why is that? Because when, in order to get to the parliament, you need a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. So if you know that you need a lot of money for the campaign, for marketing, in order to draw balls, to have balls or whatever, to meet people, to talk to people, to not do your regular job in order to get elected, all these things need money. And if you know that when you actually get into the parliament, you won't have that money, you're not going to get there in the first place. So what is going to happen with what the opposition is proposing? Those people that are going to go to the parliament are going to be only the rich people that have the money and will still continue to have the money. Yes, go.
I know the status quo today, every money that the politician needs to run for himself comes from donation and etc. and stuff, they go for that. The real problem here is that the politician is not part of the public. He doesn't know the good laws to go back to the public and describe it to them.
Thank you very much. What he's trying to say is that in order to, for example, take a decision for someone, you need to be that person. We don't believe that. In order for example, empathize, to be in the place of people that have special needs, you don't have to be a person that has special needs. We truly believe that the reason we have representatives in the parliament is that because they have the time, they have the knowledge, and they have the common sense in order to understand, even if you're not in the same position as someone, that you can take measures that are going to help those people. So, I'd like to explain a bit about the political system and how it works. We have those elected representatives. What it means, ladies and gentlemen, it means that the everyday person, the normal person, the person that takes the median or the lowest wage in this society, doesn't have the time or the energy in order to every day handle the political issues that happen in a society. And what it means, that's why we have those 200, 300, depends on the country, MPs that are there to represent us and take decisions for us. That's exactly what they need to do. And why this is a difficult job? It's a difficult job because we need someone there that we can trust, ladies and gentlemen. We can trust that they're not going to steal from us. We're going to trust that they're going to do everything they can in order to care for us. So it's a full-time job, ladies and gentlemen. It's a full-time job that someone needs to be happy to do that. So we have 2 points, ladies and gentlemen, why we need to pay them more in order for them to feel happy and in order for us to trust them. The first of it is that they have to focus on that one job. Those people, before getting elected, they had different jobs, ladies and gentlemen. But they have to give up on their jobs in order to go into the parliament. But if the wage that they will be receiving as MPs is less than what they were receiving, or it's the median wage that it doesn't allow them to have the life that they had, or a better life, or in order to cover their expenses, they're not gonna be happy. They will try to do different jobs, like being a lawyer or doing something else. And we don't want them to not being 100% focused on the decisions they have to be. We want them every day in the parliament to taking the decisions, to be present in the talks being and decisions being done in the parliament, and not the empty parliaments that exist today. And second of all, ladies and gentlemen, is the corruption, and how this corruption actually is being done by the money that they're gonna need, actually, ladies and gentlemen, as I have proven you. My partner is totally, fully going to explain you. So, as I've stated you, this political system is based on the politicians to being happy and satisfied with that wage, the highest wage that they have in order to fulfill their role in this society. For these reasons, we beg you to oppose.
Thank you for that. I'd like to invite Alexander to extend the government's case. Here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to point out a couple of problems and rebuttals that I have with opening opposition speech. They said that politicians need to be happy. Exactly, they need to be happy on the average wage, the wage that the average person goes, and the standard of life that they always have. If they find life is difficult to live on the average wage, then they don't understand the troubles and tribulations that the average person has in the day-to-day life. They will understand the exact policies they need to enact to make this person's life bearable and humane. And this will effectively give them more empathy with what these people need, what the average person in society will need. So I disagree wholeheartedly with that. Secondly, they need money for the campaign. As closing government said, this mostly comes from donations and things. This does not go directly into the person's bank account. It must be spent on the campaign. It's not something that will go into them and will result in them being corrupt. So politicians should have equal circumstances, like I've just said, so they can better understand the problems that the average person will face. Now, on to another point. The median wage fluctuates. Often in a case of depression, they will see that the economy is shrinking by 0.7% or whatever, and they will focus on increasing this number effectively. But they will not understand, if they are earning more than the average person, how this has such a huge effect on their life. Perhaps if they have the median wage, then they will understand that their policies could be wrong. They could be actually making it more difficult for the average person. The average person will have a better reliability in their politicians and trust that they're making the right decisions, because their politicians are living through the exact same thing. And if their politician's life gets harder because they earn that much money later, then they'll understand that the politician is making a sacrifice personally, on a very personal level, that he knows needs to be made. They'll understand that it's not just someone saying, oh, they will pay more money. It's saying, I will pay more money because I see that this is fair, that I can bear this at my current standard of living. Okay. Then also, under the status quo, people have very little faith in politicians. They generally believe that they do not represent us. They are an elite, if you will, that is so far distanced from the trials and tribulations of the average person that they will not understand where the normal person's problems or complaints are even coming from. If people see that this person is not being lobbied by companies who will not have their interests at heart, they will see that they are paid for completely by the public, and they will thus have an interest, a greater interest, in doing exactly what is in favour of the public. Yes, please.
So when you're an MP and you have to work in the capital city but now can no longer afford to commute back home to your constituency or live in your constituency?
The average person can afford to commute in a capital city. Okay, I think that's not unreasonable. 49% of people can aspire to the median wage. It's not poor, it's not poverty. Secondly, and also they will have limousines and stuff. Well, they will have normal chauffeurs and assistants like most politicians do. That's not part of their income or part of the thing. They will have the same things which enable them to do their jobs. They'll have assistants like many people on median wage do if they're in a management position. Which brings me over to that point. The politician's life is not so difficult that they cannot survive on the median wage. They have assistants who they can delegate to. They have a committee who they will assign jobs to. Their role is largely a leadership position. They do not have to do every single thing themselves. So I do not think that a median wage is unreasonable at all, because frankly a lot of people can aspire to the median wage. It is by no means poverty in any way. As you say, scandals exist under the status quo, so this means that now, if they cannot accept things, they must take more money, so they will have to accept illegal money. No, I do not think this is true. It will be quite a strict process. People will not people will not be able to just take bribes instantly, because frankly, they know what's going in and out of the politician's bank account under this system. Yes?
But do you think that they're going to have more motivation to get more money because they won't have it?
No, because the kind of people who will aspire to be politicians in this system will be the kind of people who are not in it for the money. They are not in it for the contacts they can make, for the lobbying that will increase their standard of life. They're in it because they believe in improving life of the people of this country. They believe that they have a vision to steer this country right. Many people have this belief, but there will be far more in this new system because the money will not even be a factor. They will. Yeah.
So what stops an MP just saying, actually, I'm going to work really, really hard to make sure the top 50% of the population of my country has a massive increase in their income, so my income can increase? What's to stop them doing that?
So you're saying it will be bad if 50% of the country standard of life improves massively. I think that's a huge success as a politician. Bringing the median wage up hugely is genuinely considered to be a successful campaign or a successful implementation of policy. So thanks very much. And lastly, well, the money will be transparent. It will be capped at a median wage. People will not have any doubts in their mind that these politicians represent them, that they have their best interests at heart. This will increase so much more faith. A lot of people do not even vote under the status quo. This will create a system where people are more encouraged to vote because they're voting in one of their own. They're voting in someone who they know will represent them. Thus, more people will vote because they feel that the politicians are more invested in improving things for people like them, people like the median average wage earner. And thus, more people will vote. The society will become more democratic as a result, and ultimately better decisions will be made as a result, because there's not a small few who care, and a small few will obviously not have the interests of the many at heart. So ultimately, many people will come to an average decision thanks to this, which will be what is best for the average person in the country. And yes, that's my speech.
Thank you for that. And to close the first half session, I invite Wien.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here because we actually believe that being a politician is not a normal job, and it's not a job that it should be paid by the media wage. And this is the way we should continue. We should keep living on, because being a politician is not so easy. It has a lot of responsibilities, and we believe that they should be paid very well in order to have effective politics and people who will lose their problems. So to begin with, we have heard from the first a member of the government that we want democracy should be representative. Of course we agree with that, but that does not imply that politicians should have the same problems to lose the problems of the public. We believe that if they are well paid, they will have they will be more motivated, and they will have more incentives to lose the problems of the people, and they also will be less corrupted if they have the money they deserve for this job they have, which is already very difficult. No, thank you. I would like to move on with some rebuttal from the previous speaker. He said that politicians will take care of the problems if they live in them. Actually, first of all, their job is being a politician, which means that people vote for them and people trust them to lose the problem. So people give them the power to take care of all the problems. So their job is to do that. And secondly, actually the society consists of a lot of different groups. Like we have migrants, we have people with special needs, we have old people, we have one-parent families. If a politician, for example, a politician have to lose a lot of problems. So this is not implies that they should have one of them problems and in order to lose this problem. They should take care of all the problems and not maybe focus on a specific group. No, thank you. And secondly, they said also that we will have politicians who are not there for the money, they will have the vision. Actually, we want you to be aware of the fact that money is always an incentive. And we live in a society where money plays an important role. So money will always play a role. And in this specific job, which is being a politician, money should play a role because they have a lot of responsibilities. We want you to be aware of the fact that being a politician is not like a media job. Like some jobs are different than the others. It's not the same to be a worker in a factory and being a doctor. Being a worker means that I go to the factory, I work, and after 2 o'clock maybe I will go home and have no problems because my boss has the problems to some problems to lose by having all the needs I need tomorrow to produce. But being a doctor, for example, implies that I have more responsibilities. I take care of human lives. This has to do with being a politician. As Luisa explained you very well, politicians have a full-time job and they actually should care for the people during their whole day, 24 hours per day. So they have a special job with a lot of, in a minute, they have a special job and they should be paid according to that, yes.
Of course, the public is pretty diverse and there are different kind of personnel that you need to promote, right? Doctors and
yes.
Civil workers. But we think that the most crucial one is the poor one, is the laws that are talking about the expenses and the prices, and they're the ones that don't have the lobby to promote them, and that's why we need the public to be more aware of that.
Yeah, of course we need the public to be more aware of that, but this is not the way, as we are trying to explain you, to do that, because our goal should be to have effective politics and being effective in their job, and by being paid, no thank you, by the media weights, it's not gonna actually lose our problems, but it's gonna create more problems. So according to my constructive case, I would like to begin with the fact that how the corruption argument to continue. As Luisa will tell you. And my second argument is how do we see this problem from the side of the society? Why this? If we have politicians who are being paid, being well paid, how does this create a society who sees politicians and their job by the importance it has? So to begin with, by the corruption. It is easy, very easy actually, to get corrupted. If you are a politician, on the one hand you are managing a lot of money, so it's easy to get into the trap and take some money if you are not if you need them and if you have a lot of the problems that the median wage person has, and so they should be well paid in order to not have to take care of all everyday problems all the people take care, because they have to do different things that these people, the people who are paid not by the media weight, they have also more or less responsibilities than the politicians. And secondly, they can easily be corrupted by the stakeholders, by very rich firms or businesses in the country. For example, if the public wants a policy about, for example, a green policy, and the public needs to wants the politician to support this policy, a business can easily give money to this politician, so the politician is going to take the money because he needs the money and not support the opinion of the public. So then we won't we will not have actually the effective politics we need, and we will not have a society which is going on and have incentives to go on. And secondly, according to how the people see them, if we give the politicians a higher wage, this implies the importance of the job they have. So the people are going actually, the people will take more seriously their job, and they will vote with more responsibility. And this will lead to voters who will manage the power they have by voting better. So we will have more responsible voters. And that's why we believe politicians should not be paid by the median wage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd like to call upon Daniel to open up the second part of the debate.
Okay. I'm gonna have two main extension and 3.5 points of rebuttal. The first point is gonna be how politicians actually get decision and where it stems from, and I will give examples that we didn't hear a lot from the first half. The second point will be how bribe or any prone to bribery will not be worse in the future, like the first opposition is keep saying here. But before I get to my point, I have 3.5 points of rebuttal. So the first thing that the deputy of the leader of the opposition was saying, that politicians today don't understand needs of people, for example, with special needs and all of these different problems. But we are saying here, and this is why my partner here said about this won't be the main factor that will be changed by doing this motion. We are saying that what will be changed is like the expenses of living or taxes, because the interest of the normal day-to-day worker is not served by any lobby today, and we can see who are working in the lobby. We can see the drug companies, medication companies, big corporation that influence our tax and so on. And we're saying that by doing this motion, by getting the politician to get a medium salary, a medium wage, he will understand the needs of the public that selected him. The second point of rebuttal is their assumption that politicians are working all day long and they need to get more. But we are saying here that there is no correlation between how many hours a day you're working to the salary you get. You can see mothers who are working 24/7 for decades and they don't get any money. Their work is amazing. So we are saying not that it's not important that people will get a lot of money, but the correlation is not necessarily in this case. The third things of rebuttal, the 3.5, is the point of the corruption. We're saying that already today there are roles of corruption, and it will be in the future as well. And the assumption is that if politicians will get more, they won't have any incentive to bribery. And we're saying this: if we're scared that our politician will get a bribery, we don't need to elect them in the first place. So this amount of salary means that they are presenting. It needs to be something symbolic, so they will present our ideology. And about the half point is about the public assumption toward this. We are saying that the public trust will rise through this transparency of salary that those politicians will get, because they will know how much their politicians are getting and will not feeling like they are hiding from the salary and essence and so on. So how the politician get a decision? We're saying that in the first place, It came from ideology. It was a person who was a leader. He wanted to influence. But throughout the time, when he went throughout the scale of hierarchy, he's not working alone. He can't prioritize everything and all the time. He gets a lot of money. He doesn't really do groceries shopping. He doesn't know how much things cost in the supermarket. So he have assistants and he have consultants that prioritize things for him. And he has lobbyists who have probably interest to sell drugs, for example, or to have lower tax for the oil industry in the same country. So the priorities are not doing by him. And we're saying the decision making, being intuitive to this person if he is aware to the things itself. Just like a minister that has autistic child, we want to integrate his child with the public education system. We're saying that a politician that has the medium salary will know the needs in the ground, because his wife or his children or himself or his mother or his father will do the groceries shopping. He will understand that his salary is not mutual to the tax prices, for example. So by doing it by himself, it will get intuitive. It will prioritize by himself. We are saying that today the consultants and the lobbyists are doing things really great, but they're prioritized, and we want the public choose his politician. He didn't choose those people. So by doing so, he wants the politician to prioritize, but what is certain value. The public expect the politician to understand them. When he changed the decision, the first people who are influenced by it are those public, and only from bottom up. So in the status quo, it takes months so the politician will understand that something don't work right. But by doing the medium salary, we understand that the taxes and things on the ground will change, and he will be as any of other the citizens. So by doing so, he will have incentive to change. He will know if he can send his child for a public or a private school, for example. And now today, with a lot of assets that he has, he can. Second position. Okay, yeah, first. Sorry.
Okay, so deciding for 10 million or 40 million people, the anxiety that it brings to your life, do you think that might be needed to compensate for or balance for that? The extra anxiety that is like not normal person?
I believe that the amount of people you influence by your work, it doesn't really matter to the salary you need. I believe that for a politician, a salary is just something symbolic that needs to reflect the ideal you are coming from, and it doesn't necessarily, if you're good or bad person, we don't see a correlation for how much you get paid. So why there won't be any more bribery? We see throughout you going higher in the hierarchy, there's lack of transparency. These the same people, but they don't. They are influenced by lobbyists, by more temptation, by ego difficulties between them, and different politicians. When there's miss of transparency, the politicians are not honest with their motives, because they have, for example, if there is a war or something that they know that about to do, they'll change their agendas because they have a lot of money to lose by it. But we're saying when it will be transparent, it will get more transparent, they will feel the needs, and it will be more easy and more incentive to pass the thing that he came from. He will represent better either the minorities, the religion, the society, the class he came from, because it will be connected again to those values. But I don't think we call you to get this motion.
That, and for the last constructive speech of this debate, I call upon Heather.
Okay, so during my speech, the first thing I'm going to do is actually define what a median wage is, actually talk about how you change the median wage and the incentives this would have for politicians. Then I'm going to talk about why people go into politics. I'm going to talk about the people who go into politics for financial reasons, and also why you get people who go into politics for altruism. I'm going to talk about how this policy would affect all of those and why it would lead us to a worse political system, right? Most of my rebuttal is integrated. There's just one point I want to start off with, right? Oh no, sorry, two. Right, there's this talk of corruption, right? Corruption is illegal. If you're wanting to rehaul the entire political system and do lots and lots of harm for it because there is corruption, we don't have to defend the corruption on our side. What we just have to say is we think it is really good when governments point out things that are illegal and try and fix those without all of the massive, massive harms that happen when you enact this policy. Also, this idea that direct experience equals empathy, right? If that was true under the status quo, we would not see all of the well-paid politicians who are phenomenally economically left, who advocate for things like workers' rights, who advocate for things like higher minimum wages, and who generally care about poor people, right? We think that maybe there are other reasons why you get politicians who don't really care about poor people, and that doesn't actually change under the system, so I'll go on to explain. Right, first, median. So I really liked it that this motion had a specific word instead of just average, and I'm a maths student, I get excited about these things, right? So what the median is, so it's an average where what you do is you line up everybody in the country's wage and then you count in until you hit the middle person, right? This is not the mean where we just add everyone's wage together and divide by the amount of people. So they've picked a median for a very specific reason. And the reason is, right, unlike averages, where you would have to like with an average, right, if you wanted to increase your wage, you could just add some really rich people in the top and everybody's wage would increase. With a median, what you have to do is not only increase your, the middle wage, right, but you have to increase the wages of everybody above you, right? You don't have to do anything with the bottom wages, right? So I'm going to talk about why. So I'm on to my main substantive now that I've cleared out what a median actually means, right? So why do you go into politics? So I'm going to start with money and I'm going to split this into two people. I'm going to talk about self-interested people who already have money. I'm also going to talk about working class people who want to increase their standard of living, which we think they are totally allowed to do and should support. So self-interested people, right? You're probably going to want a little bit more money. And I've already told you about the way that medians work, so you're probably going to think, how do I increase the wages of the top 50% of the people in my country? Now, Opening decided to tell us this is a great idea. No, because the way that you do that is you don't put any caps on banker bonuses. You reduce income tax, right? You maybe look for other things that you can classify as income that aren't previously classed as income, right? And to add that into the pile. Why are these all incredibly harmful for the bottom half, right? Well, what you tend to find is when you lower income tax, governments have less tax to spend on really supportive things like welfare, right? So you reduce the amount of money available to the most vulnerable. Also, when you start classifying random things as income that working class people might have, right? Suddenly, their income goes up and you might think this is a positive thing. But for a lot of people who's, if their income increases in any way, shape or form, even if it's not in a tangible way that they can access, so adding in your value of your car now is part of your weekly or monthly income, right? This then stops you being able to get things like housing benefits, right? Which we think is really important. So by doing this marginal increase in income, even though you don't increase the amount of money in your bank, you actually stop people's ability to have welfare, access to welfare. No, thank you, we think that's really bad. But also working class people, right, who might want to be able to engage in social mobility, right, who might want a better life for themselves as well as being able to change the way the political system works, right. This doesn't encourage those people to join into politics, right? They will probably look for other routes into being able to change. So maybe joining lobby groups, right? Maybe working for charities, which is great, but we lose their voices in Parliament and that is problematic. Okay. And now I'm going to talk about the people who get into Parliament for altruistic reasons. I'm going to talk about working class people who don't actually mind what they get paid, but why this is harmful for them. I'm going to talk about independent candidates, why they're really useful to politics and why we should encourage them. And I'm going to talk about women and MPs with extra expertise, if I can get all of that in. Right, so what I'm trying to ask, right, so say I'm a politician from, and I'm going to set this in the UK because I know how much things cost. I'm a politician from Newcastle, where I'm from. It costs me £80 every time I commute into London, right? London rents are also ridiculous. They are the most expensive city to live in Europe, I think, but it's one of the top 5, right? So I'm going to have to pay rent for the 4 days of the week I have to be in London. I also have to commute twice, right? That's an extra 80 quid each journey, as well as being able to have a house in Newcastle. On the average wage, we can't do this. This is why you don't find people who live in Newcastle but have a job in London, because that is ridiculously expensive. You tend to have your job in the city where you live. This isn't how MPs work. You need to be able to go home to see your constituents. This is impossible to do under their system because they also don't have MPs' expenses, right? So that's highly problematic. But but also, right, when they want to tell you about trust in politicians, being able to have interactions on a day-to-day basis with your politician when they go home to their constituency is one of the reasons people actually believe and trust in their politicians, so you undermine that trust already. So you can't get working class people because they are simply not able to afford all of the extra jobs that you have when you're a politician, right? Independent candidates, right? They have this whole thing of like, oh, we don't really care about the money that you have to raise to put yourself forward as a candidate because your party covers it. If you do not want to join a party, right, and actually your branch of political altruism says, I don't like what the main parties within this country are saying, I want to stand up for a different thing, which also, right, lots of small communities really enjoy having independent candidates who care about their like relevant issues and aren't just part of the massive politicians that you think just follow party lines. So you also lose out on that, so you lose out on more trust in politicians, right? Independent candidates just won't be able to put forward the capital to be able to do this, so we lose them. That harms politics, right? We also heard about like mothers that just got brought up in COSE, which is really useful because, yes, being a mother is also a full-time job, and because of the way that society is structured, you tend to be in charge of looking after kids if your household does not have enough money for full-time childcare, which quite often you need as a female MP with kids. So, right, you are no longer able to have that extra money aside to be able to pay for childcare when you're a job as a politician, which opening has told us is one of the most intensive jobs ever, right? It is not a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday day like job. It tends to be 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? Which is just impossible to do if you cannot pay for childcare, so you lose women's voices in politics. That's really problematic. And also MPs with experience. What is the incentive of a consulting doctor who decides, actually, I've done loads in medicine and that's really good, now I want to go into politics to help improve the way that like politicians look at medicine? What is the incentive for a research scientist to go in? What is the incentive for someone who works really high in theatre to go in and add expertise to politics? There is absolutely none anymore, so you lose all of those voices. What you get left are with MPs who want money, so are going to try and up the median wage, harming the bottom 50%, who have like families who own homes in big cities, so they're able to live there. You don't change anything apart from like making everything worse. So for all of those reasons, I beg you to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, and to conclude the side of government, I invite Noah.
I'm going to sum this debate by two clashes. First, how it's going to better the work of the politician, being more attached to the public in a very specific way, like we explained from the second half, about the specific law that we think that we're going to change, opposed to all the very not intuitive example of the mentally disabled and all of that. We don't think this proposition is talk about those kind of demographics. Second of all, how it's going to change the public's opinion in a more depth from the first half as well. Before that, 3 points of rebuttal. Firstly, we got a very analyzed analysis from the second half about the median and why it's so different from the average. Firstly, we still think there is a motive for them to change and bring the median up. I said electronic engineering is still a different. We don't think that specific definition of their extension is going to change something to this motion. Second of all, she's talking about the motivation of the politician. Everybody today talked about the motivation as a dichotomy. If you want to go for money or if you want to go for serving the public. We say it's not a dichotomy. Like every person, there are different stuff that's going to affect his decision, right? If you're going to pay him nothing, he won't going to do it. But secondly, if he has the chance to go for the private market, he can make a lot of more money. So we say it's not a dichotomy. Under this proposition, he has enough money to suspend himself. We're talking about the UK, the median wage is really, really good. He can live in the mid-cities, he can live inside his constituency, and I answer to the second point to them, so it's not that big of a change. Secondly, we think he still has the drive to serve the public. Like we see that a lot of politicians come from an army service, or come from debate, or come from specific need to do this kind of thing. If he didn't have this motivation, he would go for the private sector. We're talking about personnel with a lot of capabilities, right? And you can always get a lot of more money in the private sector. So that's why we don't think the motivation is that just big of a deal, and we got you better examples for that. Thirdly, she's talking about really specific people that we want to get into politics, right? Single mothers or scientists. Firstly, we say you don't need to be a single mother in order to serve the single mother, right? I can be a feminist but not be a woman and give you good laws that serve feminists. So I don't see why we need specific single mothers or physicians to be inside politicians. Second of all, we don't see that big of a difference because we tell you again, it's not that small amount of money and it's really, really okay. So let's talk about the first clash. Firstly, we need to say why it's that. Okay, so firstly we say the most important thing in this debate is how it affects the decision making of it. I already told you about in the rebuttal why the motivation is not that crucial and gave you better answers to that. But secondly, we say the crucial thing and the very specific disattach that we get from the public and the people that serve him is the specific expenses of living, right? It's the example that we get from the second government about the specific laws that we think that today the public can serve, right? Because if he still have the motivation to do that, so why getting so what is the thing that getting lost in the way? So we give you the process and in a more depth for the second government, how this decision making getting damaged, right? We talk about you firstly that you need to be acknowledged about the problem, right? He get a lot of papers, he get a lot of secretaries and all that stuff. And secondly, he need to put something in advance, right? He need to take all this amount of knowledge and to promote a specific thing. So how does it work? Daniel talks about the intuitive way of his thinking. If he doesn't feel that way, if he get all this knowledge and don't have an intuitive bias towards something very, very simple, it gets lost in the way, so he doesn't promote those specific kind of law, right? Second of all, he doesn't have the incentive to do it, because if he lives in an ivory tower and don't need to buy, I don't know, a yogurt for £6, he doesn't have the same incentive. Maybe he's gonna finish his term 5 years later, but he don't gonna get the same incentive to change it right now. So after that, we got a lot of analysis from the upside talking about all the corruption that can be had. The first thing that we gave you is talked about the status quo. Already today in the status quo there are laws that defend corruption inside politicians. So if first opposition trying to argue that now we can get it can get a lot of money in a very specific way from lobbyists, we told you already it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen by law, it doesn't happen by committees that prevent it. What maybe can happen in the long term, maybe there are some kind of incentives to go and work for the lobbyist and they can promise him that. That's a more depth of analysis that we get from the first half. But we tell you for that's not just big of a deal, because he still has a lot of capabilities, and if he's thinking about the second step of what he do with his career, that's not gonna change it right now, because he's not gonna get the money on this term, right? So we don't think all of the calls we get from first opposition and sometimes from second opposition that it's gonna be more corrupted. It's true, we think that on our status quo, the situation with the lobbyists is going to be the same, just the incentives of the politician are going to be different from the lobbyistic, and that's why we're going to have a better work from the politician. Before I come further, second, do you have a POI?
Yeah, so in your rebuttal, you said that men can totally represent women, that's fine. Your entire analysis is why rich people can't empathize and represent poor people. How can you have both of those things exist?
Okay, so firstly, I tell you again, I don't see why single mother is very, really important in this debate. But second, and more importantly, I talked to you about the decision making of the personnel, right? I talked to you about the damage that is getting into act inside this thinking. So even single mothers and even men can be related to women, but if during his work inside the parliament something is getting disrupted, that's that's a single thing that we need to change. So I can be a man and serve women, but I can still have the process of my intuition being broken inside and not serving women in the end, right? So there is a difference between who I am in the beginning and the process that I'm getting through inside my parliamentary work. So we think that the process of his thinking during the parliamentary work is the thing that's getting damaged, and this is why we do need this law to be applied. That's why we do think that in advance I can be something else and serve a different kind of person, but I need to have the same kind of process. So let's talk about the public. Firstly, I think we see it as a less important class, because we think that the public not always know, and the public had elected before some people with money. But we do say that there is a change here. First proposition talked about now we're going to feel some more related to them, but we gave you something more intuitive. We talked about the transparency. Now I know in more depth what is my politician doing, right? Because he need to go to the marketplace. He need to do all of this stuff in the constituency. He need to be more inside the public sphere if you want to act. And if I see a more transparent interaction between the public and the services of the public, it's better for me to serve them. I see them as better, even though they are different from me, and that's why we think that on the second glance we also win the public's opinion, because all of the stuff we're going to propose.
Thank you for that, and to conclude the opposition side of this debate, let's all like call upon Bailey.
So the entire government trend brings us a very altruistic view of the world. They say these MPs will work in this way, therefore good outcomes occur. From opposition, what we tell you that MPs simply don't think in this way, and they actually have very active incentives to screw over 49% of the population, all of whom are specifically the most disenfranchised under status quo, and their lives are getting even worse. Note that the top 51%, by being the top 51%, are already doing fairly well, and society needs to prioritise the lower parts of society who aren't doing so well, who do need this help. They've got an active incentive to screw these people over. But before I do this, I'll summarise the government cases. So opening government firstly have the major inconsistency. When in response to POI they turn around and be like, oh no, they still have chauffeurs. Like the entire case is based on, oh, they'll sympathise with the average person. The average person doesn't have a chauffeur. If they did, I wouldn't have to drive to every competition, right? The average person won't sympathise with a politician who still gets a chauffeur. So either A, this defeats all of their own analysis, or B, they don't get this chauffeur and therefore don't get to go home on every weekend to visit their constituency. But moving on to the rest of their case, saying, we're going to focus this in Europe. So this was a move so they can basically alleviate corruption. The difference between corrupt politicians in Europe and corrupt politicians in South America and Africa is basically that we're better at doing it, right? We call it expenses rather than thank you for having £100. So this is why my MP claims expenses for 24 houses. He doesn't live in 24 houses. That's 2 houses for each month of the year. It just doesn't happen, right? They're still corrupt. They're just better at doing it. So when they come up to us and say, about lobbyists, they won't get money. The way lobbying in Europe works is that they go to the campaign funds, so they still get their job the next year. Yes, it doesn't go into their back pocket, but they still benefit massively for it. So it won't be affected by their policy. It'll just mean it'll go to their campaign funds as well, unless they're just sideline campaign funds, in which case, what the hell was the point of advertising politics? Right, then he goes on to altruism. So the thing is, the sort of person who's attracted to politics isn't this altruistic person. The altruistic person they're talking about normally goes to charities because they want to be on the ground and they want to see real change for their actions. The average person who is altruistic to the extent normally goes to the front lines. The people going into politics, as the sort of old phrase goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It really does. The sort of person who wants the power to rule over millions of citizens is normally a fairly arrogant, a fairly power-hungry person who likes this sort of feeling. He's not sort of the person who goes down to the street and sort of feeds the homeless people. These are the altruistic people. This is where these people go. The sort of people go into politics are normally the power-hungry people, this sort of 10%. I mean, you've just seen this, it's just true. Like, you just see this from the politicians we have in every single country. The sort of person who runs charities doesn't normally get elected to prime ministerships and presidencies. Then we get closing, who come up and they tell us, so women, single mothers, Heather, it doesn't matter. Right, so single mothers do matter because we need them in Parliament to give their voice, right? He says that men can equally sympathise with women to the same extent that rich people could sympathise with poor people, which is their case, right? You can't, on one hand, say that rich people can never understand poor people, but on the same hand go, men can sympathise equally well for women, right? This can't not happen in the same world. These are mutually exclusive properties. What really happens is, as we've seen, that women don't get their rights properly heard until they were in Parliament getting their voices heard, right? It was only once they got their vote that they start getting real headway in women's rights. They start getting headway in things like the wealth gap and getting things like you can't discriminate them in hiring policies, right? This only happened once they were in Parliament. Same thing for women's rights. So we need these people. When they go up and say, we don't really care like if women just drop out because like they can't balance both a home life with having a low wage because they can't look after their children, particularly single mothers, right? We say this is unacceptable from their side of the house. No, thank you. Right, then he said, you've got an incentive to change. Right? So firstly, we've already pointed out, like, they'll still do things like lobbying. And secondly, MPs tend to get things like free rides, so they'll be like, have a free holiday here, which isn't a wage, it's just free shit that MPs get, right? They don't actually have this incentive to change because they still get this. Then they're likely to, yes, go.
It is less likely that a politician will promote the lobby of big businesses that diminish the average Joe because they don't have the same interest under our proposition.
Right, so as I point out, these MPs aren't going to be new people, right? And they're still going to, as I said, they will just fund their campaigns, right? You fund the campaign to get them elected. So even if you suggest that these MPs are going to be all altruistic, then the big firms will just find an MP, find some guy and be like, look, we're going to pay you and get you in because we'll just have so much advertising. You will now become MP because basically you pick who you're going to vote on, normally on how much you've seen of that person. The more advertising you can pay for by this campaign fund, the more likely you are to get in. So even if these altruistic people have incentive to go in, they won't get in because campaigns will just basically campaign fund for their own people. Then they said, they're likely to come from the same background. So firstly, like, they're just going to come from private schools for carrying on. And that's basically most of the government's case. Now, what Heather brings you the most important? So you've now got an active incentive to increase the 51%. These tend to be the middle income people. These people sort of start sending their children to private schools. So what do you do now as an MP? You just go, so now if you get a scholarship into a private school, this counts as a wage, which actually means, like, if you've got a scholarship into Eton, that's £20,000. Brilliant. The median wage is now skyrocketing. Like, this person isn't actually getting any new money. It actually actively harms people who want to get their child into these sort of scholarships. Because if you're a low-income family and you want to get your child into Eton, and all of a sudden he's got this scholarship, he can go there for free, he can get the same chances as everyone else who's had the same really privileged upbringing. Now he can't go. Why can't he go? Because now you lose your council house because the state thinks you earn 20 grand a year, which is insane on top of your basic income. No, thank you. Right? It's just clinically insane. And even if they don't do that and they try to make this out, like, it's still an active incentive to just have weird counting just to increase the median wage. It doesn't help the average person. And then you just do things like Heather points out, where you start increasing the bankers' bonuses and you just go, like, actually, no, we're not going to stop you from doing it. Do it more. Give them bigger bonuses, because this means that median wages are going to increase as a result. Then it points out you just can't afford, the average capital city pays 20% more than anywhere else in the country, right? This means either two things. Firstly, as it points out, you just don't go back to constituency, which means you're less in touch with the average problems of your people, or you're just getting average wage for Westminster. And the average person living in Westminster has very different problems to the average person living in the countryside. The average person in the capital city going to Parliament every day will not be in touch with the average person in the countryside because they don't have money to go there anymore, and they haven't come from there, right? And note that the minorities now don't have an incentive to go into Parliament. Right? No one has ever gone, oh shit, they're paying me too much, right? No one's done this. If this altruistic person existed, they would just donate 50% of their wage to charity and still do the job, right? No altruistic person goes like, no, you're paying me too much money, right? They'll just donate the rest to charity. But basically means the lower income people who need to strive for decent income because they need to feed their children don't go into politics, because only the rich people can afford to go in there, because they get the free house for mum and dad, because they get the free rides, because they've already got everything they need, they just need to pay for food. But the people who don't have this, who do need to pay for the family, who do need to pay for the houses, they don't go into politics. This is why it screws over society massively. For these reasons, vote opposition.